I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you. Then she suddenly smiled. Your father would have been proud, she said. He was an excellent Quidditch player himself. You're joking. It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he left the grounds with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of steak and kidney pie halfway to his mouth, but he'd forgotten all about it. Seeker, he said. But first years never, you must be the youngest house player in about a century, said Harry, shoveling pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after the excitement of the afternoon. Wood told me. Mom was so amazed, so impressed, he just sat and gaped at Harry. I start training next week, said Harry. Only don't tell anyone. Wood wants to keep it a secret. Fred and George Weasley now came into the hall, spotted Harry, and hurried over. Well done, said George in a low voice. Wood told us. We're on the team too, beaters. I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year, said Fred. We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year's team is going to be brilliant. You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us. Anyways, we've got to go. Lee Jordan reckons he's found a new secret passageway out of the school. Bet it's that one behind the statue of Gregory the Smarmy that we found in our first week. See you. Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome turned up. Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the Muggles? You're a lot braver now that you're back on the ground and you've got your little friends with you, said Harry coolly. There is, of course, nothing at all little about Crabbe and Goyle, but as the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. I'd take you any time on my own, said Malfoy. Tonight if you want. Wizard's duel. Want only, no contact. What's the matter? Never heard of a wizard's duel before, I suppose? Of course he has, said Ron, wheeling around. I'm his second. Who's yours? Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. Crabbe, he said. Midnight all right? We'll meet you in the trophy room. That's always unlocked. When Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each other. What is a wizard's duel? Said Harry. And what do you mean you're my second? Well, a second's there to take over if you die, said Ron casually, getting started at last on his cold pie. Catching look on Harry's face, he added quickly, but people only die in proper duels, with real wizards. The most you and Malfoy will be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you knows enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expected you to refuse anyway. And what if I wave my wand and nothing happens? Throw it away and punch him on the nose, Ron suggested. Excuse me. They both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. Can't a person eat in peace in this place? Said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying. Bet you could, Ron muttered. And you mustn't go wandering around the school at night. Think of the points you'll lose Gryffindor if you're caught, and you're bound to be. It's really very selfish of you. And it's really none of your business, said Harry. Goodbye, said Ron. All the same, it wasn't what you call the perfect end to the day, Harry thought, as he lay awake much later, listening to Dean and Seamus falling asleep. Neville wasn't back from the hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving him advice such as, if he tries to curse you, you'd better dodge it, because I can't remember how to block them. There was a very good chance that they were going to get caught by Filch or Mrs. Norris, and Harry felt he was pushing his luck, breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneering face kept looming up out of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. He couldn't miss it. 11:30, Ron muttered at last. We better go. They pulled on their bathrobes, picked up their wands, and crept across the tower room, down the spiral staircase, and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry. A lamp flickered on. It was Hermione Granger, wearing a pink bathrobe and a frown. You, said Ron furiously. Go back to bed. I almost told your brother, Hermione snapped. Percy, he's a prefect. He put a stop to this. Okay, and that is where I will take a break. Does anyone want to start reading the next part? Okay, go for it.
Okay. Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. Come on, he said to Ron. He pushed open the portrait of the fat lady and climbed through the hall. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portrait hall, hissing at them like an angry goose. Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourself? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I get from Professor McGonagall for knowing about witching spells. Go away, all right. But I warned you. You just remember what I said when you were on the train home tomorrow. You're so. But what they were, they didn't find out. Hermione had turned to the portrait of the fat lady to get back inside and find herself facing an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit, and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor Tower. Now what am I going to do? She said, cheerily. That's your problem. So wrong. We got to go. We three are going to be late. They hadn't even reached the end of the corridor, where Hermione cut up. Listen, I'm coming with you, you're not. Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Fudge to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I tell him the truth. That's I was trying to stop you. And you can back me up. You've got some nerve, said Ron loudly. Shut up, both of you, said Harry sharply. I heard something. It was a sort of snuffing. Miss Norris breathed Ron, squinting through the dark. It wasn't Miss Norris. It was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but jerked suddenly awake as they crept nearer. Thank goodness you find me. I've been out here for hours. I couldn't remember the new password to get into bed. Keep your voice down, Neville. The password's pig snout, but it won't help you now. The fellow's gone out off somewhere. How's your arm? Said Harry. Fine, said Neville. Show them. Madame Pomfrey mended in about a minute.
Do you want to keep going or take a break?
I want to keep going.
Keep going? Okay.
Okay. Good. Well, look, Neville. We've got to be somewhere. We'll see you later. Don't leave me, said Neville, scrambling to his feet. I don't want to stay here alone. The Body Browns have been passed twice already. Ron looked at his watch and then glared furiously at Hermione and Neville. If either of you get us caught, I'll never rest until I have learned that the curse of Boggy Squirrel told us about and use it on you. Hermione opened her mouth, perhaps to tell Ron exactly how to use the curse of the buggies. But Harry hissed at her to be quiet and beckoned them all forward. They flitted around the corridors, striped with spores of moonlight from the high windows at every turn. Harry expected to run into Fletcher and Mr. Norris, but they were lucky. They sped up a staircase to the third floor and tiptoed toward the trophy trophy room. Malfoy and Crabbe weren't there yet. The crystal trophy case glimmered where the moonlight caught them, cups, shells, plate, and statue winked silver and gold in the room. In the darkness, they edged along the walls, keeping their eyes on the doors at either end of the room. Harry took out his wand in case Malfoy leaped in and started at once. The minutes crept by. He thought maybe he's chickened out. One whispered, then a noise in the next room made them jump. Ron looked at his watch and sniffled. The noise in the next room made them jump. Harry had only just raised his wand when they heard someone speak, and it wasn't Malfoy. Sniff around my sweet. They might be lurking in the corner. It was Flitch speaking to Miss Norris. Horror-struck, Harry waved madly at the other three to follow him as quickly as possible. He scurried silently toward the door, away from Flitch's walls. Now syrup had barely wiped around the corner when they heard Flitch enter the trophy room. They're in here somewhere, they heard him mutter, probably hiding this way. Harry mouthed to the others and petrified. They began to creep down a long gallery full of suits of armor. They could hear Fletch getting nearer. Now suddenly let out a frightened squeak and broke into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around the waist, and the pair of them toppled right into a suit of armor. The
Okay.
clang and okay.
Okay. Good job. Okay, so I know some people just came in, so I'm just gonna like kind of mention what just happened. So basically Malfoy challenged Harry to like a duel, with a magic duel, and so right now they're kind of like they're like waiting for him to show up, but he hasn't shown up yet. And in the middle, like Hermione and Neville showed up, and Hermione was trying to stop them. So that's basically what happened. All right, so I'll let someone else read this time. Does anyone else want to volunteer and read?
Me?
All righty. So let me.
Where do I start?
Yeah, I'll let you know. It is right here. So start in the sentence that says, the clanging and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle.
The clanging and crashing were enough to make the whole castle. Run! Harry yelled, and the four of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around the doorpost and galloped down one corridor then another. Harry in the lead, with any idea where they were or where they were or where they were going. They ripped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway, hurtled along it, and came out near their charms classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. I think we've lost him, Harry panted, leaning against the coat wall and wiping his forehead. Neville was bent double, wheezing and spluttering. I told you, Hermione gasped, clutching at the stitch in her chest. I told you. We've got to get back to the Gryffindor Tower, said Ron, quickly as possible. Malfoy tricked you, Hermione said to Harry. Realize that, don't you? He was never going to meet you. Filch knew someone was going to be in the trophy room. Malfoy must have tipped him off. Harry thought she was probably right, but she wasn't going to tell her that. Let's go. It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't gone more than a dozen paces when a doorknob rattled and something came shooting out the classroom in front of them. It was Peeves. He caught sight of them and gave a squeal of delight. Shut up, Peeves. You'll get us thrown out. Peeves cackled. Bonding at midnight, Icklebursties. Tut, tut, tut. Naughty, naughty. You'll get caughty. Not if you don't give us away, Peeves. Please. Should tell Filch. I should, said Peeves in a saintly voice, but his eyes glittered wickedly. It's for your own good, you know. Get out of the way. Get out of the way, snapped Ron, taking a swipe at Peeves. This was a big mistake. Students out of bed, Peeves spelled. Students out of bed down the charms corridor. Ducking under Peeves, they ran for their lives. Straight to the end of the corridor where they slammed the door and it was locked. This is it, Ro moaned as they pushed helplessly at the door. We're done for. This is the end. They could hear footsteps. Bill, running as fast as he could toward Peeves' shouts. Oh, move over, Hermione snarled. He grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, Alohomora. The lock clicked and the door swung open. They plowed through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it, listening. Which way did they go, Peeves? Filch was saying. Quick, tell me. Say please. Don't mess with me, Peeves. Now where did they go? Shan't say nothing if you don't say please, said Peeves in his annoying sing-song voice. All right, please. Nothing. Ha ha. I told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please. Ha ha. And they heard the sound of Peeves washing away and Filch cursing in rage. He thinks this door is locked, Harry whispered. I think we'll be okay. Get off, Neville. For Neville had been tugging on the sleeve of Harry's bathrobe for the last minute. What? Harry turned around and saw quite clearly what. For a moment, he was sure he'd walked into a nightmare. This was too much, and top of everything that had happened so far. They weren't in a room, as they had supposed. They were in a corridor, the forbidden corridor on the third floor. And now they knew why it was forbidden. Do I continue reading?
I'll stop you right there and we'll kind of just go over what we just read. So basically, um, Harry and Ron and friends, they went to the trophy room and basically they got caught, right? And so Hermione was saying, oh, I bet Malfoy did this on purpose. I bet Malfoy didn't show up on purpose. So and she was like, maybe he told Filch because Filch is like the hall monitor. Maybe he told Filch and he's doing this on purpose to trick you. And so do you think that that was true? Does anyone want to answer? Do you think that Malfoy was tricking him, or was he like actually going to show up and he was late? Okay. Well, I'll just say what I thought. I thought that um he probably was tricking them, but no one knows for sure. So because that question will never be answered. Only Malfoy himself would know. Okay. Does anyone else want to continue reading?
Me.
You still want to read?
I never read before.
Oh, what's your name? I don't know who read and who didn't.
Um,
Okay. Anyways, whoever wants to read, let me see where we left off. Right here. Okay. So start from whoever wants to read. Start from they were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog.
They were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog, a dog that filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling mad eyes, 3 noses twitching and quivering in their direction, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery ropes from yellowish fangs. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them. And Harry knew that the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise. But it was quickly getting over that. There was no mistake that those thunderous growls meant. Harry groped for the door knob. Between Filch and Death, he'd take Filch. They fell backward. Harry slammed the door shut and they ran. They almost flew back down the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else because they didn't see him anywhere. But they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. Where on earth have you been? She asked, looking at their bathrobes hanging off their shoulders and their flushed, sweaty faces. Never mind that pig snout, panted Harry, and the portrait swung forward. He scrambled into the common room and collapsed, trembling into armchairs. It was a while before any of them said anything. Noel indeed looked as if he'd never speak again. What do they think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school? Said Ron finally. If any dog needs exercise, that one does. Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. You don't use your eyes, any of you, do you? She snapped. Didn't you see what it was standing on? The floor, Harry suggested. I wasn't looking at its feet. I was too busy with its head. No, not the floor. It was standing on a trapdoor. It's obviously guarding something. She stood up, glaring at them. I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We could all have been killed, or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed. Ron stared after her, his mouth open. No, we don't mind, he said. You'd think we dragged her along, wouldn't you? But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about as he climbed back into bed. The dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Gringotts was the safest place in the world, for something you wanted to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts. It looked as though Harry had found out where the grubby little package from Vault 713 was. Chapter 10, Halloween. Malfoy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that Harry and Ron were still at Hogwarts the next day, looking tired but perfectly cheerful indeed. By the next morning, Harry and Ron thought that meeting the three-headed dog had been an excellent adventure, and they were quite keen to have another one. In the meantime, Harry filled Ron in about the package that seemed to have been moved from Gringotts to Hogwarts. And they spent a lot of time wondering what could possibly need such heavy protection. It's either really valuable or really dangerous, said Ron. Or both, said Harry. But as all they knew for sure about the mysterious object was that it was about 2 inches long. They didn't have much chance of guessing what it was without further clues. Can I stop here?
Yes. All right. So what just happened was that as they are running away from Filch, right? Because Filch caught them outside outside of their tower, they ran into the three-headed dog, right? And so that was scary enough in itself. And then Harry's thinking that, oh, maybe it's actually guarding something, and that's why it's there. And so now they're kind of thinking about the three-headed dog and why it exists and what they're hiding. Okay, so does anyone else want to continue reading? Okie dokie. Let me just tell you where we left off. So, okay, so right here, it says neither Neville nor Hermione showed the slightest interest, and keep reading. Go ahead.
Neither Neville or Hermione showed the slightest interest in what lay underneath the dog and the trapdoor. All Neville cared about was never going near the dog again. Hermione was now refusing to speak to Harry and Ron, but she was such a bossy know-it-all that they saw this as an added bonus. All they really wanted now was a way of getting back at Malfoy, and to their great delight, just such a thing arrived in the mail about a week later. As the owls flooded into the great hall, as usual, everyone's attention was caught at once by a long, thin package carried by 6 large screech owls. Harry was just as interested as everyone else to see what was in this large parcel, and was amazed when the owls soared down and dropped it right in front of him. knocking his bacon to the floor. They had hardly fluttered out of the way when another owl dropped a letter on top of the parcel. Harry opened the letter first, which was lucky because it said, "Do not open the parcel at the table. It contains your new Nimbus 2000. But I don't want everybody knowing you've got a broomstick, or they'll all want one. Oliver Wood will meet you tonight on the Quidditch field at 7 o'clock for your first training session. Professor McGonagall." Harry had difficulty hiding his glee as he handed the note to Ron to read. "A Nimbus 2000, Ron moaned fiercely. "I've never even touched one." They left the hall quickly, wanting to unwrap the broomstick in private before their first class. But halfway across the entrance hall, they found the way upstairs barred by Crabbe and Goyle. Malfoy seized the package from Harry and felt it. "That's a broomstick," he said, throwing it back to Harry with a mixture of jealousy and spite on his face. "You'll be in for it this time, Potter. First years aren't allowed them." Ron couldn't resist it. "It's not any old broomstick. It's a Nimbus 2000. What did you say you've got at home, Malfoy? A Comet 260? Ron grinned at Harry. "Comets look flashy, but they're not in the same league as the Nimbus. What would you know about it, Weasley? You couldn't afford half the handle." Malfoy snapped back. "I suppose you and your brothers have to save up twig by twig." Before Ron could answer, Professor Flitwick appeared at Malfoy's elbow. "Not arguing, I hope, boys," he squeaked. "Potter's been sent a broomstick, Professor," said Malfoy quickly. Yes, that's right," said the Professor Flitwick, beaming at Harry. "Professor,
You want to stop there?
McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances Potter. And what model is it? I want to stop here.
Okay, so just now, what happened was Harry got a broomstick mailed to him while he was having his meal, right? And so he got his broomstick mailed, and it's a super fancy model. And so now, and then Malfoy kind of like took it, and he was like, oh, and now he's like telling other professors, but they already knew about it. Anyways, I'll finish off reading the rest if that's all right. And we'll go to for about 7 more minutes. Okay. A Nimbus 2000, sit, said Harry, fighting not to laugh at the look of horror on Malfoy's face. And it's really thanks to Malfoy here that I've got it, he added. Harry and Ron headed upstairs, smothering their laughter at Malfoy's obvious rage and confusion. Well, it's true, Harry chortled as they reached the top of the marble staircase. If he hadn't stolen Neville's Rememberall, I wouldn't be on the team. So I suppose you think that's a reward for breaking rules? Came an angry voice from just behind them. Hermione was stomping up the stairs, looking disapprovingly at the package in Harry's hand. I thought you weren't speaking to us, said Harry. Yes, don't stop now, said Ron. It's doing us so much good. Hermione marched away with her nose in the air. Harry had a lot of trouble keeping his mind on his lessons that day. It kept wandering up to the dormitory where his new broomstick was lying under his bed, or straying off to the Quidditch field where he'd be learning to play that night. He bolted his dinner that evening without noticing what he was eating, and then rushed upstairs with Ron to unwrap the Nimbus 2000 at last. Wow, Ron sighed as the broomstick rolled onto Harry's bedspread. Even Harry, who knew nothing about the different brooms, thought it looked wonderful. Sleek and shiny, with a mahogany handle. It had a long tail of neat, straight twigs, and Nimbus 2000 written in gold near the top. As 7 o'clock drew near, Harry left the castle and set off in the dusk toward the Quidditch field. He'd never been inside the stadium before. Hundreds of seats were raised in stands around the field so that the spectators were high enough to see what was going on. At either end of the field were 3 golden poles with hoops on the end. They reminded Harry of the little plastic sticks Muggle children blew bubbles through, except that they were 50 feet high. Too eager to fly again to wait for wood, Harry mounted his broomstick and kicked off from the ground. What a feeling! He swooped in and out of the goalposts and then sped up and down the field. The Nimbus 2000 turned wherever he wanted at his lightest touch. Hey, Potter, come down! Oliver Wood had arrived. He was carrying a large wooden crate under his arm. Harry landed next to him. Very nice, said Wood, his eyes glinting. I see what McGonagall meant. You really are a natural. I'm just going to teach you the rules this evening. Then you'll be joining team practice 3 times a week. He opened the crate. Inside were 4 different sized balls. Right, said Wood. Now, Quidditch is easy enough to understand, even if it's not too easy to play. There are 7 players on each side. 3 of them are called chasers. 3 chasers, Harry repeated, as Wood took out a bright red ball about the size of a soccer ball. This ball is called the quaffle, said Wood. The chasers throw the quaffle to each other and try to get it through one of the hoops to score a goal. 10 points every time the quaffle goes through one of the hoops. Follow me? The chasers throw the quaffle and put it through the hoops to score, Harry recited. So that's sort of like basketball on broomsticks with 6 hoops, isn't it? What's basketball? Said Wood curiously. Never mind, said Harry quickly. Now, there's another player on each side who's called the keeper. I'm keeper for Gryffindor. I have to fly around our hoops and stop the other team from scoring. 3 chasers, 1 keeper, said Harry, who was determined to remember it all. And they play with the quaffle. Okay, got that. So what are they for? He pointed at the 3 balls left in the box. I'll show you now, said Wood. Take this. He handed Harry a small club, a bit like a short baseball bat. I'm going to show you what the bludgers do, Wood said. These two are the bludgers. He showed Harry two identical balls, jet black and slightly smaller than the red quaffle. Harry noticed that they seemed to be straining to escape the straps holding them inside the box. Stand back, Wood warned Harry. He bent down and freed one of the bludgers. At once, the black ball rose high in the air and then pelted straight at Harry's face. Harry swung at it with the bat to stop it from breaking his nose and sent it zigzagging away into the air. It zoomed around their heads and then shot at Wood, who dived on top of it and managed to pin it to the ground. See, Wood panted, forcing the struggling bludger back into the crate and strapping it down safely. The bludgers rocket around, trying to knock players off their brooms. That's why you have two beaters on each team. The Weasley twins are ours. It's their job to protect their side from the bludgers and try to knock them towards the other team. So you think you've got all that? 3 chasers try and score the quaffle. The keeper guards the goalposts, and beaters keep the bludgers away from their team. Harry reeled off. Very good, said Wood. Have the bludgers ever killed anyone? Harry asked, hoping he sounded offhand. Never at Hogwarts. We've had a couple of broken jaws, but nothing worse than that.